All right, welcome everybody to another exciting episode of Under the Dome. I'm your host, Allen Ulrich, here with my partner, Bob Rose. How you doing tonight, Bob?
Oh, I'm real good. I'm real good. I hope you're well, Alan.
I'm doing well. I'm kicking it old school tonight. I got the headphones on and the whole bit because I don't have my regular camera. I'm using my camera for my laptop, so going a little old school. Um, so Bob, we watched the Seattle game. I don't watch your halftime shows, mainly because that's the one time I'm like scrambling around trying to catch up on all the stuff I've been stopping what I'm doing to watch the game. Um, Halftime, the game was, I think it was 13. No, I'm sorry, it was 17-10. The Saints are driving, and was that the fumble or was that the interception? It was a fumble by Kamara. It was
Yep.
a fumble by Kamara. So instead of going up, say at least 20-10, it becomes a 13-17 halftime. Am I remembering that correctly? Um,
You
or
remember the sequence, but you're missing a score.
it became
Yeah, it
night.
was yeah, it was
It became
17-13 at the
yes,
fumble,
and then it was
and then
19.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. I thought so. So we're talking about a 14-point swing then,
Mhm.
at most, because you could go up 24 and you end up being down 19-17 at halftime. And the thing I noted about it was this is the kind of thing that when Breeze and Peyton were here, they lived for that because they knew they were getting the kickoff in the second half.
Mhm.
So you go up, you score a touchdown before halftime, then you come out your opening drive, score another touchdown, you
Mhm.
blow the game open. Now the other team's playing catch up. And I said, my good, bad, and ugly, I thought we were very lucky that we got the turnover that we got because that turnover gave us the 7 points. That was a Chris Olave touchdown.
Yeah.
Um, and it changed the momentum of the game and allowed us to run the ball, run Alvin Kamara, run Taysom Hill, and got us out of the predictable passing situations. So I thought that was huge that we were able to get that turnover. Um, how did you guys, before you knew that was going to happen, when it ended up being 19-17 in halftime, what was the general tone of the halftime highlight show?
Brendan and I were joking on pregame, saying that we hoped that we would have a more enjoyable halftime show. And I quipped back, I said, I am sick of starting off our halftime shows with my facial expression like this. Uh, but sure as hell, that's the way our halftime show started. And just before Brendan and I went on the air, I said to him, I said, they're going to lose this game, right? He goes, "You think so?" I said, I'd be willing to bet money on it, and I'm glad I didn't, uh, because you're right. I mean that sequence of events to open the second half, the turnover created by the defense, and then the Chris Olave touchdown pass. That, as much as anything else that happened during the game, that was the difference in the game. Because you remember, Olave did not come back into the game after that touchdown pass, which meant that, with Deontay Hardy already out and Thomas and Landry sidelined for the game, they were down to Trashquan Smith, Marquez Callaway, and Keith
Keith
Kirkwood
Kirk?
as wide receivers. Yeah, and
Yeah.
Kirkwood even caught a pass.
Yeah.
Uh, I think Traquan dropped three, but Keith Kirkwood caught a pass. Uh,
Absolutely.
but you're right. That allowed, and I thought that this particular game, as shorthanded as they were in particular, was the best offensive game plan Pete Carmichael had to date. And mainly because they focused on running the ball. The offensive line was able to execute up front. And I mean, Taysom Hill and Alvin Kamara both just had monstrous games. And it was because of that frankly saved their ass.
It's amazing. Here, Alvin Kamara got almost 200 yards total offense. He was real close to doing the 100. And we finally got this incredible screen pass and it was just perfect in the timing.
Mm-hmm.
Execution. Um, and yet that's an afterthought because Taysom Hill had 4 touchdowns on the day. And it wasn't like he was vulturing touchdowns. I mean, the plays that he scored touchdowns on were really, really good play calls.
Mm-hmm.
Especially, I think it was the first one where they had Alvin Kamara come out and he went into motion and he kind of dropped back as if he was going to catch a flare out pass or like a bubble screen. And you could see the defense all swinging that way, waiting for that play.
Yep.
And then he runs the RPO and takes off down the middle. There's nobody left,
Mm-hmm.
and that was my favorite, one of my favorite play calls they did, the screen pass, and then the play to seal the game, where they've got 9 to 10 guys up near the line of scrimmage. Matt Millen knows they're going to run the ball. The stadium knows he's going to run the ball. Seattle knows he's going to run the ball, and they still run the ball. And once you got to the second level, there's nobody left.
Yep.
And I honestly, at 27, had that run have to be 65 yards instead of 60 yards, probably catches Taysom. But they still get the touchdown out of it. It was it was great. Everything was just great in execution, the way they were just running the ball. My other favorite play was the pass to Trotman.
Oh yeah.
Because here you are, Matt Millen's like, he's back there again. They're going to run it, and the color guy, the play-by-play guy whose name I don't even remember, says, they're going to run it. And sure enough, he goes, oh, look, he's going to pass. Oh, look, Trotman's wide open. I'm like, I guess he is. They all cheated up. They had one guy spying on him. And it was really for a game that, or for a season where the Saints seem to run into more bad play calls.
Mm-hmm.
This game, they really looked prepared for Pete Carroll's defense. Yep. And knew what they wanted to do and were able to execute those plays. They rarely fell behind on down and distance. So
and again, I go back to, you look at who they had on the sideline. They were missing 4 starters. They're regardless of what you think about Jameis Winston, he's still the starting quarterback. There is usually a big drop off when a team has to go to their number 2 quarterback. So Jameis Winston's on the sideline, Michael Thomas is on the sideline, Jarvis Landry is on the sideline. And pretty soon Chris Olave and Deontay Hardy joined him, to do what they did with the personnel that they had. Now, the Seattle defense isn't exactly the reincarnated 85 Bears or 76 Steelers, but still, that's an NFL defense. Seattle does have some playmakers on that side of the ball, and Pete Carmichael going in game plan. Seattle's best 2 playmakers are their inside linebackers. Kamara in 2 previous career meetings against Seattle and those linebackers just ate them alive on the perimeter. And that's what Pete Carmichael did with Alvin Kamara. Finally.
Yeah. It's almost like they need to be back in the 2021 mode to start calling good plays. And I have to give Andy Dalton a lot of credit, because Andy Dalton is executing the offense the way it's being called.
Yes.
I thought one of the problems that they had with Jameis Winston is Jameis is such a talent, especially throwing a deep ball. You tend to get locked into, and Jameis does this to you, getting locked into, I'm going to throw the ball over the yard. I got receivers who can stretch the field. I'm going to start throwing this ball deep. And what you saw with Andy Dalton running this, because he's at the age he's at, this offense is running a lot more like the 2019, 2020, even to an extent 2018 Saints, as far as Andy's dropping back, boom, gets rid of it. And except for that one throw, which I almost blame Trashquan Smith. I like that name. I almost blame Trashquan Smith more for that interception than Dalton. Yeah, Dalton placed it to the inside, and that probably wasn't a good idea. He probably needed to put it on the outside, but that was probably one of the worst pass routes I've ever seen a receiver ever run. It's like he didn't even try. He just kind of ran a go and then kind of lazily turned around, and here comes the ball to the inside. Whereas if you run a little hook, um, it's boom, it's right there. He's catching it right in front of the defensive back. So, and of course, of all people, Traquan Smith is the one who catches the ball on 3rd and long to extend the drive. So he gives you, again, he gives you that one play where you're like, okay, he can probably be a number 4 receiver or something. We can do something with him, but that's what you get. You get that one catch or you get that one game where he does something, and then the rest of the time he's the invisible man.
Yep. And Matt, you're right. And actually, I had a story coming out about Hardy on Monday. Yeah, he's not officially on injured reserve yet. I don't know why they haven't made that move, but yeah, it's all but confirmed. Yeah, Deontay Hardy is likely going to miss the rest of the season, folks. At the minimum, you're probably looking at the next 6 games.
Yeah, and they're talking about pulling up Rashid Shaheed. I'm going to butcher that name before it's all said and done. But Rashid Shaheed, they're going to bring him up. And he was he on IR? Was he just on physically unable to play, non-football injury list? What was he on?
I'm not sure, Alan. I know he started camp on the NFI, on the non-football injury list, even though he was injured. And he actually missed most of training camp. So a lot of us did figure he would be cut and possibly brought back to the practice squad. But we all but ruled out his already slim chances of making the roster. So that's what happened with him. And he got banged up again at camp. But luckily they've been able to stash him on the practice squad. It will be interesting to see if they bring him up. And Nick Underhill himself, he didn't confirm that, but he loudly speculated on that possibility today. I personally don't know. I wouldn't mind seeing Rashid return kicks, but their solution without Hardy worked out okay. And that is their solution without Hardy, based off of the roster, people on the roster now, are Taysom Hill returning kicks. Dwayne Washington would be an option there too, and Marquez Callaway would be your punt returner. None of the 3 are nearly as explosive as Deontay. But let's face reality. Deontay Hardy was not having a standout season anyway. So that's been a part that's missing from their game in the first place.
Yeah, I think they want to see how he looks in practice returning kicks. They're going to do a lot of kicking to him and see how consistent he is in fielding the ball. One thing I did not know, and I found out during the game, the reason why you see Marquez Callaway in there is they said Marquez Callaway's got some of the strongest hands on the team. So they like him handling the ball as much as he does. He's not explosive, but he can really, they don't have to worry so much about him fumbling. And of course, now I just said that he's going to fumble in this game,
right?
but that's the thing. That's why they wanted him back there. And that one kick where he returned it and he turned around, they spun him around. So he went 5 more yards backwards.
Yeah.
And they really hit him hard. And I'm like, oh God, don't fumble it. Whatever you do, don't fumble it. And he didn't. So I was really happy to see it. But then I was also worried about, shit, if he's hurt, we got nothing left, And the other person I was really disappointed in this game. We were talking about Traquan Smith earlier. I was really disappointed in Ingram. In the Minnesota game, I thought his ankle flared up and gave him some problems. So that's why Murray looked so much better than him. But in this game, he just looked terrible. And it really hurt because here you have showing that Alvin Kamara is showing you the patience, and he is he's letting his block set up before he hits the hole, then takes off. Ingram looked like it was 2011 all over again. He's just running right into the pile.
Yeah.
As soon as he catches the ball, he's not showing any patience, like he's never run the football before. And I was just shocked at how bad he looked, which is probably why we have so many running backs in camp today or at
Mhm.
the Saints facility today, because we lost Tony Jones to Seattle, which honestly I don't feel like that's a big loss.
Yeah,
Uh, you
it's not
know,
August anymore.
no, no. I mean, he ran hard, but I think you get the same kind of production out of Dwayne Washington. Quite honestly, I think
Mhm.
he's Dwayne Washington light. But I think they're bringing some backs in to see, and it's a lot of power backs. It's not really scat backs. It's guys that can run between the tackles. So we're going to talk about this in a minute. This popped up. What's the deal with the roughing the passer penalties? We're going to talk about that in a second. That just dovetails on all the stuff that we've been talking about the past couple of weeks.
Years.
Yeah, in years. But is there any of these backs? I think Howard, the ex-Bears guy and Eagles guy, I think he's probably the biggest well-known name of the group that they had out there. Any of these guys worth anything right now?
I no, Alan, I can't see it. Yeah, Jordan Howard, if he's healthy, Howard is an interesting option. Yeah, because he even had a couple productive games with the Philadelphia Eagles last year, and they shared backfield duty.
Mhm.
Which is what the Eagles like to run anyway. And it's not if any of these guys are signed, it's not like they would be expected to carry any sort of the load whatsoever. Dwayne Washington is still this team's third back. Uh,
Mhm.
but yeah, you never know what could happen. I do think they need a body, because unlike the receiver position where they at least have Kirk Merritt and Rashid Shaheed on the practice squad, and they brought Kevin White in for a workout last week, they don't have Saints don't have anybody running back wise on even the practice squad. So they're really kind of scouring, the
Mhm.
dredges here, by bringing in these backs, listen, it doesn't hurt to kick the tires on some of them, see what kind of tread, see what kind of burst they have, and like you said, they're looking for a power back here. They already have their all-purpose back in Kamara. They need somebody that can pick up yardage between the tackles, and therefore making Kamara a more viable threat on the edges of a defense.
Since we've talked about this already, Michael Thomas is supposed to play this game. Adam Schefter came out, I think it was Sunday morning, saying that, yeah, Thomas is going to miss this game, but he is expected to play the following week against the Bengals. We're going to get to see, hopefully, Thomas versus Eli Apple.
Mm-hmm.
That's going to be really entertaining. And for those who don't remember, when Thomas and Eli Apple were at Ohio State together, Thomas had so trashed Eli Apple in inter squad practices and scrimmages. He kept telling the coaches, "You need to find another guy out here who can actually cover me. This guy can't cover me." And they didn't seem to have any problems when they were together here with the Saints. But I'm curious to see if that sort of rivalry comes back this week.
Yeah, me too. Because not Eli Apple. Michael Thomas isn't the sort of public trash talker that Chauncey Gardner-Johnson is, but
Mhm.
Michael Thomas very clearly gets in the heads of opposing defensive backs. You see them lose composure against him all the time, and Apple is a well-known fragile head case. So
Mhm.
if the Saints can trot all of their receivers out there, you would think that the Bengals would go out of their way to avoid having Eli Apple on Michael Thomas whenever possible. Not to say that Jarvis Landry or Chris Olave would be any easier a matchup. But with Eli Apple, it's up here. He fought. And I was a big Eli Apple supporter when he was here. And in 2018, he played some solid ball.
Absolutely.
But it's very clear that once the game or whatever happened got inside of his head, he unraveled like that. We saw that same kind of thing in the playoff run with the Bengals last year. So like I said, and let me say this: very rarely will I be watching a Saints injury report saying, if so and so is out, they're not going to win, or if so and so is in, they have a better chance. I can't remember definitely not since I've been doing this media wise. I can't remember being so anxious for an injury report this week. Because Cincinnati can stop the run very, very well. They get after the passer very, very well. And, I'll put it this simple. If Michael Thomas, Chris Olave, and Jarvis Landry are all on the injury report, if they don't get at least two of those guys to play and play effectively, they lose this game. It's I hate to use injuries as an excuse, but it's really that simple.
No, and you have on the other side of the ball, and this is where that's a good segue. Marshawn Lattimore
and Marcus May,
and Marcus May both. They need to practice. They need to be in this game too, because Lattimore, although he does not handle speed guys well, if they end up putting T. Higgins on Adebo, and Lattimore's out there, and he can play against Jamar Chase. That at least is a fair matchup for our defense. As much as Adebo is struggling right now, because I still think he's struggling with that ankle injury. He just does not have the burst that he showed in preseason. But if you have to go to Roby and Adebo, we're going to get toasted. And it's not a knock on Roby, but Roby can't cover Chase. And certainly Adebo cannot right now. Adebo can handle a guy like T. Higgins, but I don't think Adebo can handle Chase. You need to have Lattimore out there to at least get physical with Chase. And with Marcus May out there, Marcus May can provide a little bit better coverage over the top compared to what you're seeing right now with Justin Evans, with PJ Williams is now on IR, but Tyrann Mathieu, who I think is having one of the worst seasons as a Saints defender. He's undersized, which has always been his problem, but he made up for it with his instincts and his ball skills. He can break on the ball like there's nobody's business, but he hasn't even shown that, except for that one play in Minnesota. He really hasn't shown that game-breaking ability. And I thought last week he made how do the kids say it now? He made business decisions rather than throw his body around and tackle DK Metcalf. He pulled up quite a bit when Metcalf was coming his way. And that one touchdown was ridiculous, where he just kind of gave up.
He literally went like that.
Yeah, from at the 5-yard line on down. Yeah, he can't tackle, Calvin. You're right. He's pulling a Deion Sanders without Deion Sanders' speed. And it's really disappointing. So now Marcus Williams just went on IR over there in Baltimore. So we can finally put to rest the comparison to see if the Saints were winning this deal. But yeah, I'm really disappointed. I'm not a big LSU fan, as you well know, and I certainly wasn't a big Tyrann Mathieu fan. And like we said right before we went on the air, had he not gone to LSU, he would be getting the Johnny Poe, for the young kids, Fred Thomas, Jason David. He would be getting that kind of treatment from Saints fans because that's how bad he's playing out there right now.
Yeah, I have no doubt about it. And Mays lost along with PJ Williams. That was very, very evident against Seattle on Sunday because the Seahawks just ate the Saints alive over the deep and intermediate middle. And I'm not going to. Neither you or I are putting all this on Tyrann Mathieu or Paulson Adebo for that matter. Lattimore had a slightly off day again. Bradley Roby was nowhere to be found. Justin Evans looked completely lost. And that gave me advanced PTSD because you're talking about T. Higgins and you're talking about Jamar Chase. We haven't even mentioned Tyler Boyd either. And Tyler Boyd could start for most teams in the NFL. The Saints need all hands on deck back in that secondary. I think they'll be able to get to Joe Burrow. But if you've watched any Cincinnati Bengals games, you know that Burrow can be beat around. And still, he's the closest thing to Joe Montana that there is in the league today, because you could just beat the hell out of him over and over and over again. But it doesn't matter, because he's still going to put a knife right through your heart, every single time, and he has the receivers to do it. Jordy Haltberg asked me earlier today how I would play the Cincinnati Bengals offense. And I put it I mentioned the pass rush, and I mentioned, bringing Demario Davis in as an extra rusher, blitzing him from the inside. But I said, look, you need to get physical with the Bengals receivers at the line of scrimmage. It's not that they're going to lose composure, but both Higgins and Jamar Chase, they're taller guys, but they're relatively slight of build. So maybe you can knock them off of their route, thereby forcing Burrow to hold on to the ball a little bit more. And like you mentioned, Alan, Lattimore has always had problems with speed guys, and these guys can burn. Debo still doesn't look 100%, and Roby is getting up there in years. So, what I would do, I would use those corners to get physical with these guys at the line of scrimmage, hoping to knock them off of their route, or at least off the timing of the shorter and intermediate routes. And then I would use May, hopefully if he's back, May and Matthew both in a too high safety role for optimum deep support, because I think Tyrann Mathieu still has the instincts. I just don't know if he has the range anymore to play a single high. And Marcus May was playing really well before he went down with that rib injury.
Yeah, and the thing about Evans is I think he really is just a pure strong safety. And when you end up playing him in the free spot, that's where he really gets exposed.
Yeah.
I think he is definitely a guy who goes in the box and is in run support. And I think that the safety problem right now is, and before anybody says anything with Chauncey Gardner-Johnson being traded, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson wouldn't help in this situation. He could help as the nickelback, and he could help cover these underneath guys. But before he got injured last year, in those first few games, when he was healthy, he was really struggling in 2021. People kind of forget about that because they remember the Tampa game in Tampa. They remember, him kicking the Falcons logo, that kind of stuff. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson does really well against slot receivers.
Yes.
And that's where his matchups are successful, because he can handle the slot guys. He doesn't do well with great route runners and great speed guys, but you put a Russell Gage out there. You put, I'm trying to think of off the top of my head, some of these inside guys, third receivers. That's where he really thrived. And, his trash talking is what seemed to aggravate the other receiver, and he could get in their heads, and that made his game even better. So, the biggest problem right now is we have safeties who sort of lack the range and speed to really cover, which was Marcus Williams's asset. Williams didn't always hit the best angles, and Williams didn't always do very good with, tackling. And we could talk about that all day long.
Right. But, I mean, if we're going to blast Matthew, we got to blast Marcus Williams too. For
absolutely. I mean, he just was not good at tackling. He tended to put his head down, which we all remember from 2017. But he made up for it because he was a ball hawk. Yep. He got a lot of interceptions. They didn't come in bunches like, the man who shall not be named who wore number 42, or, you think of some of the other great players the Saints have had in their past. He didn't get in those bunches, and he didn't take them all to the house, but he did get a lot of interceptions. And I think that's, if Matthew were making interceptions, I think we would tend to overlook his soft tackling skills.
Yeah.
And losing Malcolm Jenkins and losing Marcus Williams, I think that's part of the reason why you're seeing teams able to run the football in the Saints that you did not see in the past, because you're not having that safety come down in the box and really close off that outside, because they would come inside and break to the outside kind of run games, and the Saints safeties would always come down and get these guys before they were able to break to the outside.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, and that's something that I thought that Marcus May and Tyrann Mathieu would be able, to fill in for. I thought that part of their respective games would mesh in quickly with the Saints defense. I was more worried about communication issues
Mhm.
over the top, which we really didn't see a whole lot of problems with up until last week. With May out and Matthew, just being overwhelmed, at that back end. But you're
Yeah.
right, and even Marcus May had made a couple plays in the box, but
Mhm.
neither he or Matthew were really standing out in that area of their games either.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so let's switch gears a little bit and talk about the positives on the defense.
Mm-hmm.
Cam Jordan once again stepped up, made the plays of the game. I was impressed. I kind of chuckled when, Geno Smith is probably playing some of the best football he has played since the days at Michigan. Um, but he regressed to being Geno Smith, Jets
Yeah.
quarterback, a few times, especially on that last sack. Instead of throwing the ball away, he really sat and watched Cam Jordan come after him. And I think he was kind of surprised Cam Jordan could still come after him at his age.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Pete Warner is. I'll talk about Pete in a minute. But the thing about Cam Jordan, he is now officially 5 sacks behind Ricky Jackson. He gets 6 sacks, 6 more sacks this year. He will surpass Ricky Jackson. And again, Ricky Jackson had 8 more sacks as a
Yeah.
Saint in 1981. It doesn't count because it became an official statistic in
Yeah.
82. And Jackson's sack total, I think, is 128, not one. Official sack total is 128, not 115, because I think he got those last 2 years he played in San Francisco. I think he got the balance of those sacks.
That sounds right. I think his unofficial total with New Orleans was 123. But yeah, we're each in the ballpark. And like you said, sacks didn't count before 1982. So so the official historical numbers are a little bit different. But irregardless, I think Cam is playing spectacular football the last 2 weeks, and I think Marcus Davenport is playing very, very well too. Marcus,
Oh,
you back?
I'm back. Yeah, I'm
Okay.
back. I don't know what's going on here. Um, every so often, for some reason, I have a dead spot, and unfortunately, this is my working area, so I hit this dead spot, and this thing in the internet just dropped out on me. Yeah, they cheated him out of half a sack. You're right, Calvin.
Really more because there were 2 plays where Geno Smith, one of them was attributed to a bootleg run, which
Mhm.
I think is bullshit. I thought it was a sack, and then the other one was Geno made a heck of an individual effort just to get back to the line of scrimmage, and they marked it as a no gain run rather than a quarterback sack. But that's what kind of if we're we were just quipping about official and unofficial. If you're going to be unofficial about it, Cam had 3.5, 4 sacks in that game, and
Yeah.
he was a true difference maker. But I think Marcus Davenport is playing pretty well too.
Oh, he is. The thing about Davenport is it's not showing up in the stat sheet because he's not getting that sack. But man, is he throwing people around out there?
Mm-hmm.
And he's also playing incredible run support. They're not running on his side.
No.
If you watch, they are running. Believe it or not, they're running on Yamada, and they're
Yeah.
running on Cam's side because they're staying away from. I'm watching, and I invite everybody to do the same when they are watching the. Just focus on Davenport when he's out there. Look at how many double and triple teams he gets because he is that much of a menace in run support.
Mm-hmm.
Before the season started, and this was said on the preseason games. I don't think it was Jonathan Vilma. I think it was John Sitchcombe who said that Dennis Allen had said that Marcus Davenport's their most valuable player on the defensive line. And that's unfortunate. He just does not get the He's just not getting. Yeah, the thing about Davenport is he's just not getting that angle to the quarterback that he really needs. He gets tied up with the blocker for too long, and the
Yeah.
quarterback gets rid of the ball. But man, that blocker, whoever is blocking him, he is bullying this guy
Mhm.
and pushing him into the quarterback. You can see that over and over and over again. So Onyemata, that is a concern. In fact, defensive tackle in general is a concern for me.
Very.
And I thought it was a concern before the season started because since the days of Sheldon Rankins and Malcolm Brown, we just have not seen that wall in the inside where they just can just take away the inside running game. You're just not getting it. But as a result, because they're getting almost to the second level, Pete Werner is having a hell of a year.
Yeah, he is. And what's happening is, you're right. Teams aren't getting too much in the way of rushing yardage on Davenport's side. Now, when Davenport is out, that's a different story. When he is in, they are running at Onyemata, and what they're doing, they're either blocking down on Cam and pushing him inside, allowing their runners to bounce outside, or if Cam takes a wider rush, they're kind of pushing him outside more. And running literally right over Onyemata. Either way, runners have been getting to the second level very, very quickly, and that unfortunately that's on the opposite side of where Demario Davis is more often than not as well. So people that are saying Demario doesn't look like the stud that we have seen the previous 4 years, I'll grant that, but it's not that I'm not willing to say he's lost a step yet. He's not in as many plays as Pete Werner is because they're coming right at Pete Werner's side. But in all fairness to Pete is having one heck of a year so far. I agree with you.
Yeah. I've been surprised how often the Saints have gone to three linebackers again. You're seeing Caden Ellis out there a lot. And Caden Ellis is an okay linebacker. He's not a Hazlitt era linebacker because he knows what the hell he's doing. But his physical limitations show up.
He's an AJ Klein.
Yeah. And if we had a more physical linebacker out there, kind of like another Demario Davis, but on the strong side. And before anyone says Quan Alexander is not a strong side linebacker. But if we had a more physical outside linebacker there, I think that would cut off a lot of those running plays because when they got to the second level, he is there to take it down. Caden is doing what he can out there, but if they get past, if they can break to the outside away from Caden Ellis, he doesn't have the speed to get to the sideline and cut that run off. They're getting they're getting past the second level. So it's now up to the safety to come down and make the tackle.
And we just got done talking about this, the safety play and how that's lacking along in the box along the edge. So it's just it's a mixture of things, and I don't know what coaches can do either to alleviate it. I think if you have a healthy Marcus May, then you can intermix your defensive backs a little bit more, and that would alleviate some of it. Go back to your two linebacker set because Demario Davis and Pete Werner obviously have the speed to play sideline to sideline in a 4-2-5 alignment, but we wouldn't be talking about that. In a way, that's talking smokes and mirrors. If the Saints win their battles at the line of scrimmage, if the defensive tackles get their push in the middle, that's going to alter a back and force a more outside route, thereby giving time for the defensive ends, linebackers, and even safeties to close before they get to the edge.
And I think the reason why I'm even bringing this up is because that's why you're seeing the extremes. You're seeing plays where they're running back runs into a brick wall and he's down. He's not getting any yardage. And they'll do that 2 or 3 times and you'll see the gang tackle and bam, he's down. He's not going anywhere. Then the next thing you know, they're breaking wide open. You're going, where the hell is the defense? And that's where it's happening. If, like you said, the defensive tackles are not getting that push in the inside and winning their one-on-one battles, if the offensive line for the opposition can push those defensive tackles out the way and create that crease, that's when the Saints start getting exposed on defense. Yeah, it's one of those things where just somebody you can rotate in there.
Yeah.
Just a couple of downs, get about 40 snaps out of them. That would be per game. That would be great because I don't know if that person's out there. I mean, I know people talk about Ndamukong Suh and people like that, but Suh, I don't think you can get 40 snaps out of him a game. I think you can get about 20 before he gets bored or whatever. But this is not a problem unique to the Saints either.
No.
And I'm going to segue into the discussion I wanted to have earlier. But if you watch the games this weekend, if you watch that Rams game, if you watch the Rams-Cowboys game, if you watched that Chiefs game last night, you watch some of these other games during the day, the Jets Dolphins game, I think it was, a lot of defenses have weaknesses across the board. You're seeing them get exposed. And it's part of it is the salary cap. Part of it is you're paying your stars so much money that you're now going with rookies and undrafted free agents or cheap contracts to kind of fill out your roster. That I think that's why you're seeing all these weaknesses on teams. The Rams just got old. They put all the chips in. They went full, George Allen, trade all my draft picks away because I want to win a Super Bowl right now. And that works if you get it. And you did get it. Okay. You got the 2 Super Bowls. Actually, one of them you don't belong in there. We're not going to talk about that game. But the other game, you did go in there and you did win. But now it's time to pay the piper. And you're paying the piper you have an aging quarterback who's playing behind a crap offensive line. And he's getting the hell beat out of him. Mm-hmm. And because you've given out so much money to your stars, you've lost all those great receivers you had to run with Cooper Kupp. So people are like, okay, if I cover Cooper Kupp and I can handle Higbee, I pretty much have shut down this Rams passing game. And Cam Akers, I'm not worried about him as a running back. So, and every team has these weaknesses. Even the Eagles have this weakness. I mean, the Cardinals really were a missed field goal away from tying that game. It's in overtime. Yep. And the Cardinals, who we play in 2 weeks, I'm sorry. We play in 2 weeks. They're not that good of a team. That coach is treading water. Mm-hmm. He is really close to being fired. This is not like the Raiders from last night, who were just a few stupid plays or bad plays away from being 4-1, and they're 1-4. So it's one of those things that we talk about the Saints because everybody focuses on the Saints, but I'm watching, just casually looking at these games. I see weaknesses on teams across the board. I mean, do you feel that way too?
Yeah, absolutely. And you figure part of my job is to write articles and break down games, either previewing upcoming opponents or writing about what went right or what went wrong the previous game. And I find myself writing the same sentences over and over and over again. When I watch the Seattle defense, for example, just coming off of the Minnesota defense, I literally found myself writing the same sentences. I could have copied and pasted and just removed and replaced specific player names. And I'm seeing that kind of thing. This Sunday, in preparation for the Bengals, what am I going to write about? The Bengals edge rushers, the Bengals safeties, and how whether the Bengals have the linebackers to cover an Alvin Kamara sideline to sideline. Offensively, I'm going to write about all the talent that the Bengals have on at wide receiver. The reason why they have that talent is because they have a quarterback on a rookie contract, a quarterback that they cannot protect because the tackles are okay, big names for sure, but okay, but they have no interior offensive line. if I was writing about the Saints and how I would defend the Saints, what do you think I'd write about the Saints? You
Right.
attack their pass, with the pass rush inside. You get physical with their receivers at the line to throw off the timing of the route. And you have to have athletic linebackers to cover Alvin Kamara sideline to side. It's and I could go on and on and on.
Yeah. I mean, and the difference between teams that are at playing or at a Super Bowl level, and I'm talking about the Chiefs, the Bills, the Eagles right now, and I guess the teams that are like in the middle of the pack, and we can throw the Cowboys in there, but
Sure.
the Cowboys, the Giants, the Bengals this week, those teams they're close.
Mm-hmm.
They're a couple breaks away from having that same kind of record as, looking like a great team. But then the teams that you expected a lot out of that are not producing, the Rams, for example, those are the teams that aren't getting those breaks. And those coaches didn't forget how to coach. It's just now the salary cap, the way the cap is structured, the way they're paying these contracts now to these, giving the superstar these maximum contracts with all this guaranteed money, even though you can do Loomis math and spread that money out along the length of the contract, you're not going to pay other guys that kind of money.
Mm-hmm.
So you're going to take undrafted free agents, older players who are playing at the end of their career, or rookies or people on rookie contract, and put them in important positions to protect your big assets you're paying a lot of money to. So you're seeing that disparity now in the quality of play by teams. I'll be honest with you, I'm watching games, I'm going, this is a terrible game. Oh, this is a terrible team. The Packers losing to the Giants in London, and why? Because their best receiver, their Michael Thomas, Devontae Adams, is now playing with the Raiders.
Mm-hmm.
So who is Aaron Rodgers throwing to? Aaron Rodgers is throwing to the Saints 2021 receiving core.
Yeah.
Except, you throw in, say, I don't know, you throw in a Robert Meacham on that team, but it's basically the 2021 Saints receiving core. Why? Because they decided they weren't going to pay Devontae Adams.
Yep.
And if the Packers can't run the football, they're in trouble. And their defense is good, but not great. Why? Because their best pass rusher, they didn't pay him. He's now off somewhere else. The Steelers got blanked. And they got their ass kicked the week before by the Bills. So, and what's going on with the Steelers? The Steelers have lost TJ Watt. That's their best player on defense, obviously. Now they like a terrible team without it. And I know this is a Saints podcast, but I'm trying to paint a picture across the league that, we can all go after Dennis Allen and Pete Carmichael and decisions they made on this team and stuff, going, oh God, we're terrible at this, we're terrible at that. But if you look at the rest of the league, you're seeing a lot of the same thing.
Yep.
You just don't focus on the Eagles, Chiefs, and Bills right now. Look at some of these other teams that we probably are going to see on the schedule, and every game is going to be like the Seattle game. It's going to be a 50-50 kind of game. Minnesota, 50-50 game kind of game. As long as we don't shoot ourselves in the foot. Shooting ourselves in the foot hurts. That's what's causing us to lose a lot of games.
Right. And I said at halftime of the Seahawks game this past Sunday that because my reaction was very fresh off of the Kamara fumble and the pass the pass defense breakdown to allow that long touchdown just before halftime. And my exact words were, bad teams make bad plays in bad moments.
Mm-hmm.
And you could say that about the Saints every single week. But you could also say that the Saints could very easily be sitting here at 4-1 right now if a couple other breaks would have went their way, or if they wouldn't have shot themselves in the foot. That's what kind of difference that we're talking about, not only with the New Orleans Saints, but several teams throughout the league. Do y'all really think the Giants are a 4-1 football team right now? Oh, hell no. Are the Bengals a 2-3 football team? No, not. And I've watched a lot of Cincinnati football this year. I would say no. The Eagles, they aren't world beat. I know they're 5-0 and they are playing extremely well. Same with Buffalo. But I sit there and I watch them and I don't think to myself, there's nobody that's going to beat these guys. No. I instead think, oh, yeah, a team could beat Buffalo or Philadelphia if they do this or this or this, or prevent this and this and this. That's what kind of, and Pete Rozelle, he's up in heaven, so the anti-Goodell plays. I had to get it in. Yeah, Pete Rozelle was jumping for joy because this is the kind of parody that Pete Rozelle wanted throughout his entire tenure, as the NFL commissioner before it became a corrupt office job.
Well, free agency certainly has helped that too.
Sure it did.
That's the other part that's really created parity is, you cannot hold on to talent.
Mm-hmm.
And groom it and build it the way you used to. How else do you explain a Cooper Rush? How else do you explain?
Right.
Yeah, I mean, because really, Dallas looked like a terrible team with Dak Prescott. Cooper Rush in there. Cooper Rush is doing just enough to win ball games. And, going back to the Saints, again, if we can avoid shooting ourselves in the foot with turnovers and stupid penalties and things like that and giving up big explosive plays. You stop giving up the big explosive plays against Seattle, it's not even a close game.
No.
You give up the big explosive, you take away the big explosive plays against Minnesota and against Carolina, who fired their coach last week or this week, fired him on Monday. You take those explosive plays away. Those are 2 more wins.
Yep.
And now you're 4-2? 4-1?
4-1.
4-1. Yeah, because and Tampa, to an extent, you shot yourself in the foot with dumb penalties and turnovers, because that's a 3-3 game. You probably could win that game 6-3.
Yeah.
So again, the margin of error is so small, and if you're not an elite team that can overcome those mistakes, that's what's hurting this team.
Alan,
what?
Who would you start at? You mentioned Cooper Rush.
Mm-hmm.
Who would you start at quarterback this week if you're Dennis Allen, and why?
Oh, this week in New Orleans, I'm starting Andy Dalton again. I'm leaving Andy Dalton in there right now until he proves to me that he can't run this offense.
Okay.
And I say that only because I know what you got with Andy Dalton. You were getting a game manager. You're not getting an explosive playmaker. But right now, that's why I went through this whole long dissertation about the way games are played today. If Andy Dalton can keep this team together and stops making mistakes, I think Andy Dalton runs this offense better at this point than Jameis Winston. And I know Jameis has a lot more talent. I know Jameis has a lot more capability. You can stretch the field with Jameis. You can't stretch him with Andy. But right now, I think this team seems to function better with an Andy Dalton. And I'm going to play him until he shows that he's costing me games. I mean, how do you feel about that?
Yeah, I pretty much agree. I definitely, I would take it week by week. But going into this week, there is zero chance that Jameis Winston is even close to 100% healthy.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
yeah. Andy Dalton is going up against the team that drafted him. The team that ultimately gave up on him, as the franchise crumbled around him.
Right.
So you have to believe that this is going to mean an extra something to Andy Dalton. So in my head, now I'm playing my inner Sean Payton, not my inner Dennis Allen. In my head, starting Andy Dalton is twofold for me. excuse me. Number one, I agree fully with what you said. I think Andy Dalton has done a very good job of running this offense, staying within his limitations. And
Absolutely.
that brings me to point number two. Jameis Winston's problem has always been reeling himself in. Jameis Winston's biggest enemy is Jameis Winston.
Absolutely.
He lets his emotions get out of control. Jameis has had an opportunity to watch Andy now for 2 weeks, take what the defense gives him, manage the game, work a defense from sideline to sideline rather than down the field. Now, if Jameis can watch Andy play within himself against his former team where emotions have got to be running high, if Jameis Winston cannot learn from that, then Jameis Winston cannot learn. I don't know if I would go in with the philosophy of I'm running with Andy Dalton until he starts costing me games, but I definitely would start Andy Dalton this week because of that.
The thing about Jameis Winston, I said this on Twitter a couple weeks ago, when they announced that he had those 4 broken bones in his lower back. I said, well, first off, there was no way he was going to miss that Tampa game. He had that game circled for a long time. It's the anniversary of his knee injury. So he was not going to miss that game. But Carolina game, I felt like that was probably the game he should have been sat. And
Agreed.
He wasn't. And we can say that with 2020 hindsight too, because until the game started to spiral out of control, Winston really was doing well enough with Tampa that game was still winnable. I still felt like he went down the field too much, but again, it's because his emotions had gotten out of control. He was trying to make the big play because he wanted to show Tampa and Tampa fans, you gave up on the wrong guy. And that was part of his problem in that game. But I had said also that when we're talking about fractures in a lower back, this is not like a high ankle sprain, which is just like a few weeks and you'll be ready. This is a broken bone. So you're looking at a good 4 to 6 weeks of sitting on the bench until that heals well enough that you can handle the pain, or it's not going to be a factor anymore. So, we're now looking at, okay, so starting the Vikings, this will be week 3. You're looking at least the Ravens game of November 7th, maybe at Pittsburgh before he's ready. And if I'm starting Jameis again, I'm targeting the Pittsburgh game to see if that's going to be the game I'm going to play him, because I'm not you got Micah Fitzpatrick back there, but I'm not as concerned about Pittsburgh as I would the following week against the Rams, where that's probably going to be a shootout. So I'm letting Dalton play, and the Ravens game is the one game I'm really worried about, because I think the Bengals game is winnable, the Cardinals game is winnable, and even the Raiders game is winnable, provided we don't shoot ourselves in the foot.
Right.
I still can't believe the Raiders are going to give up on Josh Jacobs. I don't know what the hell they're thinking.
I know.
I'm like, I will take him in a heartbeat. That's a little guy who is running his butt off. He can get paid by somebody. I think the Raiders are insane to do this, but hey, that's why they're the Raiders.
Exactly.
Because there's 2 backs I'd like to pry from other teams. One of them is Josh Jacobs from the Raiders. And I'm sorry, I would love to have Derrick Henry with the Saints.
Of course.
Because if you've got an offense and a coach that knows how to use him properly, and I'm not talking about giving Derrick Henry 400 carries, which is about what they're trying to do with him. I'm just saying, you have Derrick Henry paired up with Alvin Kamara, and then you put them both in the same backfield at the same time. Oh my God. Najee Davenport. I'm still look at him at Pittsburgh. Go, damn it.
Yeah.
Why aren't you on my team? Yeah. It's just that's when you really have a fun running game. And then Taysom Hill in the mix too.
Mhm.
That's when it's really fun to watch the game. So, I said, did I say Najee Davenport? I knew Najee Harris. I knew who we were talking about, the
Yeah.
running back from the Steelers. Sorry about that. It's my
And
son catching that.
I'm a Dalvin Cook guy too. I would love to have Dalvin Cook on this team.
Yeah,
Yeah, obviously we're talking fantasy here now.
right.
Yeah, fantasy dreams. But
Yes, I am. Yes, I am.
circling back to Taysom Hill. I really thought, and again, this is a pat on the back of the coaches. I really thought that once Andy Dalton took over the starting quarterback role, that we wouldn't see Taysom Hill used hardly at all. With the exception of a handful of plays, because I thought they were going to need to keep him
Mhm.
on the sidelines in case they needed him as a quarterback. So, people talk about all the time, Sean Payton rolled the dice. Sean Payton was a gambler. Dennis Allen is not. There's still something to that. But I think Dennis Allen, and to a lesser extent, Pete Carmichael, they are taking a hell of a gamble by starting Dalton, Winston's and street clothes, mind you, starting Dalton and still using Taysom Hill, not only for their normal offensive packages that he would be involved with, but special teams as well.
Yeah. Yeah, they are. I mean, they signed that kid, that quarterback off the street. He's on the sidelines. He's number 16. And I can't think of who the hell he is right now. It's not Kellen Mond. Who the hell was he?
Luton.
Yeah, that's
something like that.
Yeah. My son will pop up with that name in just a second.
Yeah.
But but I mean, and if he had to come in for an emergency, he's basically handing the ball off all game.
Yep.
He's not running anything. So, so, okay, I don't know what the hell that is. Oh, that's the end of that highlight. Okay. I'm looking at my camera. It was like a uterus. I'm like, what the hell is that? There we go. Okay. So anyway, so let's speaking of quarterbacks, let's talk about what has gone wrong in the NFL. We've talked over and over and over again about the officiating, and here we have a game. I thought they had some bad calls, even though we benefited from a few of them. I thought there were a lot of bad calls once again in the Seattle game. I was impressed they overturned the touchdown, the incomplete pass, and said it was a touchdown. That's something they had to do. Oh, speaking of quarterbacks getting knocked out of a game.
I saw it.
Yeah, that's Eric Hipple from 1985. I threw that up there because, that was roughing the passer.
Right.
I mean, you see, and of course, they're going to show it like 4 different ways here. Eric Hipple has his helmet go one way. He lays on the other. He's dead. He didn't stop chewing his gum, so I got to give him that. But I mean, this man is dead on the sideline. And earlier that season, it might be a couple games after the season, the Bears, 85 Bears, play the Lions, and because Hipple's hurt, Joe Ferguson, who's now in his 14th year in the league by 1985, has to play quarterback, and Wilbur Marshall kills him. I mean, he tries to throw a pass, and Wilbur Marshall comes, and he didn't leave his feet, but he hits him right here in the chest, and Joe Ferguson is laying perpendicular to the turf and falls straight down. He left his feet when he got hit, and you see his arms come out like that. And I thought he was dead too. Yep. I mean, it was a hell of it takes talent. Yeah, that's right. He never stopped chewing. But that was a rough time to be a Lions linebacker. It was 1985 Lions quarterback. Took out 3. Gary Danielson was the other one. They took him out too. Gary Danielson, the same guy who does the SEC on CBS games. That was the other backup quarterback in Detroit. Anyway, so today's roughing the passer, though, if you tackle a guy and you spin him around, they throw him down because Tua who had a concussion, when he got spun around and landed on his head, that reactivated his concussion. I learned a new word this week, which is now the new standard for concussion protocol. Is it aphasia? Is that what it is? I had to look it up. Basically, it's you don't show physical signs, but it's some kind of scan they do now to see if you are showing signs, post concussion signs. So this could impact whether Chris Olave comes out this week. Because
Yes.
I thought Olave, in the old days, Olave would have been given a smelling salt, and he would have been right back out there again.
Right.
I was thinking he would probably clear concussion protocol pretty quickly this week. It may not happen.
Nope.
So what is your take on this roughing the passer stuff? Because we saw it against, Tom Brady, of course, got his special rules, but we even saw it last night against with the Chiefs and the Raiders. Just horrible, horrible calls.
Yeah, and you're talking the Chiefs Raiders game that you're talking about. Was when Chris Jones got flagged, and Carr didn't even have the ball anymore at that point. He was stripped. Yeah. And yet late in the game, I think it was on the Raiders' final drive, Carr got jacked as he threw. I think it was at the third down or fourth down pass. And looking at it live, I thought there was going to be a flag because Carr's upper body shot backwards. Now watching when I watched the replay, I looked again, and it was a clean hit. It was a hard hit. But yet when officials are trying to feebly defend themselves now, they say that they're basically, and I'm paraphrasing, they're basically saying that they're looking at the quarterback's body reaction when they throw the flag. Well, if that were the truth, then you'd have thrown a flag on that. It would have been an incorrect call, but you'd have thrown a flag on that Carr play, right?
Right.
And meanwhile, Brady, and that's a bad example because it's the Tom Brady / Aaron Rodgers rule. But literally all Brady did was roll over on to the defender, Grady Jarrett.
Yeah. And then kicked him as he was getting up.
Yeah.
As Jarrett was getting up. Yeah. And I'm not one to defend the Falcons at all, but even I thought it was just bullshit. Barry McCockner had a great Twitter thing. He called him a warrior, and they showed like that these horrible calls that Brady gets these pass interference calls. So roughing the passer calls. But anyway, go ahead.
And again, it's the Brady rule. At the time, Atlanta was in a one-score game, one score down, and that play would have allowed the Falcons to get the ball back with really plenty of time on the clock, albeit against a good Tampa Bay defense, but plenty of time on the clock to perhaps tie the game. Instead, Tampa got to get another gimme first down, and was able to run a bunch more time off the clock, essentially putting the game away. It's one more way that the officials are ordered from the man above to control the outcome of a game. And I've said it now, week after week after week. Everybody else calls the officiating, incompetent, or ineffective, or inefficient, or inconsistent. No, it is consistent, and B, it's a lot more sinister than incompetent or inefficient. It's downright effing corruption, and I will go to my grave thinking that.
Well, one of the things that I did not put on here as part of the whole highlight package behind me is, if you go back and look at Greg Landry when he was the quarterback of the Detroit Lions, and you look up Kasulki Vikings hit on Greg Landry, and this is like 1968, 69, somewhere around there. Kasulki's a safety for the Vikings. He comes in clean off the edge. Nobody picks him up, and he knocks the hell out of Landry. Landry became an offensive coordinator in the league, but Landry is on his third drop back, and back then they used to drop straight back. They didn't do the crossover like they do today. It's the chop step straight back, and he's looking at the defense. He's looking the other way to see where he's going to throw the ball. Konsulki hits him right in the dead center of the chest. His head snaps back like he's got whiplash, and he goes to the ground. It's a great hit, and what amazed me about that is nobody picks up Landry. They all just stand around like, okay, it's time to get in the huddle for the next play. We lost yardage on this one. Nobody congratulates Konsulki for this great hit. Here's poor Greg Landry trying to get up off the ground like, holy shit, what the hell just hit me? And no timeouts. The official's like, "Can I have the ball, please? I have to set it now. Get your ass up." By the way, we got a game. TikTok, man. We got a game going here. It always amazes me when I watch that, and it was a perfect hit. I don't know why Brady didn't get a personal foul trying to kick Jarrett, other than the fact that it's Brady. They're not going to flag him for that. It's almost like, some of these other calls that I saw, we could have called both ways and just throw the flag, offsetting penalties. They just don't do that anymore.
No.
It's like, I would have called if, and of course I don't like Brady, so of course I'm looking for any reason to call a penalty. But at that point, I'm probably throwing a second flag for the kicking, and I'm going personal foul, roughing the passer, defense. Then I'm going personal foul, unsportsmanlike conduct, number 12, offense, penalties offset, replay. And I can just, now of course it's a hometown crowd. I can imagine the fans losing their shit, and of course Brady's whining the whole time. But that's really, we have what kind of train is that behind you now?
It's freight. That's life when you live on the other side of the tracks by the river.
I hear you. In the van down by the river, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah. Bob doesn't tell you he lives in a boxcar, actually. So that door you saw him close, that wasn't a sliding glass screen door. That was a boxcar door. So yeah. Man, that sucker sounds like it's right there too.
It does. And these assholes that come through during the day, when they come through, they don't blow their horn at all. The later in the night that it gets, and I kid you not, 3 a.m. they are laying on that thing nonstop as it's going by, nonstop.
I live on the other side of the highway now, but I used to live on the river side of Jefferson Highway in this area, and not far from the Mississippi River. And the same thing, the ships you hear the ships and the barges hit and that kind of stuff, and you don't hear that during the day, but man, at night it sounds like they're in your front yard. So, and they've got rules against that. They can't have that kind of stuff going on, because you can hear everything. Sound travels across the water. So, so let me ask you this. We've talked about this before, and this will be the last question of the night. Do you think that enough attention is going to be put on the league? And I'm laughing as I'm asking this question, that if it's not the Saints, it's another team, that a roughing the passer call or a horribly officiated game in the postseason, does that create an impotence for the league to try and do something to fix the problem?
Nope. Absolutely not. Not as long as Roger Goodell is the commissioner of the football league. The only way it would is if it happened negatively against a marquee.
I get that reference.
Yeah.
What is that incredibly loud whistle?
Well, as I said, the only exception would be is if it happened to negatively impact one of the marquee names, players, or teams, an LA market, a Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers. But again, as long as Goodell is in charge of the league, that's never going to happen. So again, we're living in a fantasy world here. A wannabe.
exactly. I felt the same way when we were talking about, going back to 2018. They got the outcome they wanted. The Rams went to the Super
Yep.
Bowl. It fed that market, and you're good to go. But the Saints were able to successfully lobby for review for pass interference. And the officials, the corruption that you're talking about, the corruption of the officials, they made sure they agreed that no matter what the video evidence shows, we're not going to overturn these things.
Yep.
Because if we start overturning these, we'll never get rid of this rule.
Yep.
And they're going to micromanage everything. So they successfully torpedoed that. You know, um, yeah, that would be kind of fun if John Madden was common.
It would be
But
great. Yeah.
you would want the '80s John Madden, not the John Madden of 2000 on. You'd want the '80s John Madden because that's the guy who changed the way broadcasting was done.
Yes.
That's when Madden was at the top of his game. And unfortunately that Madden long disappeared. He became an older man who was drawn over the screen. Absolutely, he would be doing that. He'd be telling these crazy stories because he would love a guy like Taysom.
Mm-hmm.
He would be telling the crazy stories about Taysom, making comments about the way things are going. I go back to the Gatorade buckets with the Giants.
Yeah.
You got the mama bucket and the daddy bucket, and he draws an arrow and he made the baby bucket right there. That kind of shit. Imagine the real Monday Night Crew, Howard Cosell, John Meredith, and Frank Gifford doing a Saints game on Monday Night Football, and hearing them talk about Taysom Hill.
Yeah.
It would be a lot of fun. It would be a lot of fun. Yes, Madden loved him some Brett Favre. Yes, he did. He loved Joe Montana too. He talked a lot about Joe Montana. He really enjoyed the 49ers offense. So yeah, there's an era though. It's like once the game changed, Madden wasn't interesting anymore. He liked Brett Favre because Brett Favre played football like a kid playing backyard football. But it was the 80s Madden is some of the best. And if you go back and watch the 1988 Saints Redskins game, John Madden and Pat Summerall do that game, you get to hear the real John Madden. The Redskins are defending Super Bowl champs, but man, he loved him some Jim Moore, and he liked the Saints a lot. Mm-hmm. And the game's frustrating because we lose that one, but it's on YouTube. You get to hear what Madden would sound like calling a game. And it was a lot of fun listening to him call that game. That's a spit game. That's the famous spitting game where Dexter Manley spit in the face of Jim Dombrowski. Dombrowski was getting better of him most of the game. So he spit in Dombrowski's face on third down. And Dombrowski, of course, punched him. Mm-hmm. And what happens? They never see the initial. They always see the retaliation. Yep. It made it for a longer field goal. Morton Anderson kicked the field goal. This old RFK Stadium was short and wide. The Redskins get the ball back in good field position, and suddenly they can move the ball at will. They score a touchdown, and they score, I think, one more field goal or something like that and beat the Saints by 10. And that was a turning point of that game. And no, John Butler was not at that game. That was at RFK. I was watching that game from I think I was in I think I was at my friend's apartment at the time in college. I don't remember when I watched that game. But we don't have to listen to Troy Aikman. Troy Aikman got in trouble today. Did you hear this? Troy Aikman apparently said during the broadcast that they need to take the dresses off the quarterbacks if they're going to call these roughing the passer calls. And of course, in 2022, that statement's outrageous. But in the 1970s, Jack Lambert had no problem saying all quarterbacks should wear dresses.
Yeah.
So different era. But I watch the Peyton and Eli broadcast on Monday Night Football when they do a game rather than listen to Troy Aikman and Joe Buck. How do you feel about uh, Chris, Chris, Greg Olson and I can't think of his name now. The play-by-play guy, the top play. Tom is no, it's not Tom Brennan. Who is that? It's Fox's number one team now, number one broadcast team. Greg Olson's the color commentator, and I can hear his voice. I just can't think of his name. He used to do the games with Charles Davis, and they were the best. I thought they were the best together.
Okay, I know who you mean. Don't think less of me. I have yet to hear that broadcast team together.
Really?
I'm so focused on Saints games, Saints coverage, etc. That a lot of football that I watch outside of that are highlights, or not highlights, but film after the fact, after they've already played, or since Master Will, the 5-year-old in charge of the living room TV,
I got you.
Since he gives up, his SpongeBob long enough for me to watch a Saints game, any other football that might be on, the TV is usually muted, for his iPad. But I will say this: I have always liked. I forget the guy's name that you're talking about too. That used to be in the booth with Charles Davis. But I liked him. Okay, yeah. Kevin Burkhardt, I was always a fan of. Greg Olson, as much as I hated him as a player because of what he did to the Saints, he is a terrific analyst. I think he has personality. He's very succinct and direct with his comments. He doesn't bore you to death. Just rambling on and on and on and on and on. So I could picture that. I love Burkhardt. Now that you brought up his name, thank you. And Olson is still a young color commentator. And I'm thankful for that because so many of these guys are boring now, so it's good to get some new life in, and I think he's terrific. And Matt, I like Kevin Harlan a lot too.
Yeah, I liked Charles Davis when he was doing a broadcast with Kevin Burkhardt. I thought Charles Davis was a really, really good color analyst with him. And I think he went to CBS. I don't know if he's still over there or not. Kevin Harlan, I believe I don't remember his broadcast partner. He had for a long time. They had stuck Moose Darryl Johnston with him. And I don't know if Darryl. I was talking about that last night with my daughter. I don't think Darryl Johnston's doing broadcasts anymore. I think they kind of they kicked out a lot of the older guys. Dan Fouts, I loved him as a quarterback. I don't think he's a very good analyst.
No,
I think he is one of those guys who talks a lot and doesn't say very much. I felt the same way about. It's now Trent Green. Okay, all right. Dan Fouts is retired from it. I felt like Fouts just didn't add much to it. Even when he was on Monday Night Football, he just did not. He didn't even build a good chemistry with Al Michaels. And how do you not build a good chemistry with Al Michaels? I mean, anybody works with Al Michaels. I love Al Michaels and the college kid, Kurt Herbstreit.
Oh yeah,
together on Amazon. I think they're great together. But at the same time, when I hear Herbstreit talk, I'm expecting to watch college football.
Right.
it just doesn't click with me. But yeah, I think they've slowly kind of weeded out some of the older guys that had been doing the broadcast together for a long time, and it's a lot of younger players in there. You see it. The only thing that hasn't changed is the studio for Fox's pregame, and it changed a little bit for CBS, but you still have, Boomer Esiason out there. You still have, Coach Cower, and Phil Simms sitting out there too. But for the most part, it's not. We're reaching a generational switch. We're going to see a lot of guys switching over who used to do the games when we were younger, going, and you're going to have a whole new group of athletes. The jockocracy, as used to call it, Howard Cosell called it, all these new athletes that have retired. All hoping to find the next Tony Romo. That's what they're looking for.
He's awful.
I don't mind Tony only because he doesn't take obvious sides. I have to give him that.
I will say that, yeah.
For a former player, especially a former Dallas Cowboy player, he doesn't talk about himself, doesn't talk about how he used to play, and certainly doesn't take up for the Cowboys. Some of these other ones, Troy Aikman is probably the greatest offender. Still talk about their old teams, So anyway, all right. Who you got coming up for Bayou Blitz tomorrow?
We got nobody. Because Jordy's daughters had the nerve to be involved in a volleyball tournament. So he can't join us. So it's just going to be Brendan Boylan and myself. Which is a shame. Well, I'm not gonna say it's a shame because Brendan's a great partner to have with me doing this. But we had such a great interview with Tyrone Hughes last week. Folks, if you missed it, we did have Tyrone Hughes on the Bayou Blitz broadcast. You could YouTube that or go to any one of the Facebook pages under the Dome or Bayou Blitz.
Mm-hmm.
And scroll down and find it. Tyrone's always a great guy to talk to. I know we're going to have him back on. But no, tomorrow it's just going to be Brendan and I talking about the Seattle aftermath and breaking down the upcoming Bengals game.
Okay. Quick prediction. I know we're not much into predictions, but how do you see this game playing out? Do you see a Saints win or?
Again, I'm going to be looking at the injury report hard.
Yeah.
I think if those wide receivers come back and Marcus May is in the lineup, I think the Saints can win this game. And Jordy put me on the spot earlier today too on our segment. And as long as y'all don't hold me to it, and I would never recommend betting any money on any of my predictions. I went with Bengals 30-27. I do think it's going to be a close game. I think the Saints pass rush is really going to cause havoc with Burrow. And I think they have if they could shut down Mixon in that running game and protect Andy Dalton or Jameis Winston, if they could protect the quarterback and establish the run, easier said than done against that Bengals front. I think the Saints are capable of putting up the points to beat the Bengals as well. But I do think it's going to be in a game in the high 20s or low 30s.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think the critical part is, and this is what I really want to see. I want to see Andy Dalton play with Michael Thomas. We have not seen that yet. If you can get Thomas and Landry out there for sure, Olave would be nice. But if we can get Thomas and Landry out there for sure, Andy Dalton starting, and they can avoid the stupid mistakes that they've been making, turning the ball over, putting the ball on the ground. I think they have a great chance of beating the Bengals because I think they can, and you have to limit the explosive plays on defense, but I think you can do that with a ground control, a ball control offense. If they can do those things, they'll win. But if Thomas and Landry can't go, Olave's not there, and you're playing basically with the same team you saw out the week before, they're in a lot of trouble. They need Marcus May. They need all hands on deck. We've passed the easy part of the schedule.
Yeah.
The only gimme game that's left on the schedule, honestly, is the Steelers November 13th and the Panthers at the end of the season. That's it. Oh yeah, and Lattimore. Lattimore needs to be in the game. It's an abdominal strain they're worried about, but if he can play, you need to have Lattimore out there. So yeah, it's a lot of. I think at this point he's just not going to learn, Calvin. I really do. But I mean, that's what it's going to take to win this game. I'm kind of worried this is going to be a kind of game too with all the damn LSU Joe Burrow fans out there.
Yeah.
This is going to sound like a home game for the Bengals at certain points of the game, which is not right. But hey, that's the way this is going to, that's why you have to jump on them early, shut those people up, and then it becomes a much better, much more Saints-like game.
Yeah.
Because I think Cam Jordan get his 5 sacks he needs in this game alone.
He could, yeah.
honestly. So anyway, we went way over tonight, as always. And I know Bob's falling asleep on me. I got to get to work the next morning too. So thank you guys for sticking with us, and we'll see you next time under the dome. Good night, everybody.
Night.